Do we need to close the door?
No, that's all right.
Okay.
We're with State Representative Lew Frederick. How long have you been in the legislature?
I was appointed in 2009, so my first special session was in 2010.
So 5 years.
Yeah.
That must be some kind of a learning curve from a first-year rookie legislator to a veteran as you are now.
Well, I won't call myself a veteran yet, but I have been here long enough to recognize a few things. It is quite an experience, and it is a vertical learning curve as soon as you get here, because a lot of what I knew, I thought, as being a reporter, I had a pretty good idea of what was going on. I discovered that there were many, many layers beneath that, and that's been part of the learning curve.
Give me some examples, some surprises that you had.
Well, I think the biggest surprise is probably just how important relationships are here in the legislature. You hear in terms of news about how many times we're arguing with one another, and how there's a big problem between Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives, rural versus urban. And in fact, those are very rare. They exist, obviously, but we really do have set up relationships to talk with one another, to work with one another, and actually to try to figure out how to do things best for the whole state of Oregon. So I've had really good conversations with my friends Cliff Bentz from Eastern Oregon and other folks from Southern Oregon, and worked with a number of people who officially, according to the common wisdom, I'm not supposed to be having any conversations with or lunch with or talking with them about anything. And in fact, we work together. There's easily 98% of the bills that come through the legislature are either unanimous or overwhelming majorities of people voting for them. You hear via media about those that we disagree on and that come up as a disagreement. But that's really the biggest thing is the layers of people, really the relationships that folks have.
So what is the job like? When you get up in the morning in Portland, you hop in the car and you drive to Salem and you go to work, and this is work. It's hard work.
It is hard work in some ways. It's hard work, and it's not as, I don't think it's as hard work as when I was a ranch hand in Nebraska, but there are other kinds of work. This is, you're trying to do different things. I like you, I get up early, but the first thing I end up doing, even before I get dressed and everything, is to look and see what the email is, what the news is, what's going on, so that I have a sense of what I might be dealing with if there's an emergency. And then it's a matter of trying to figure out how to map out what the day is going to be like, and then how it's going to relate to things in the future, both in this week as we try to get to sine die to close down the legislature, as well as what happens in the 2015 session, because I'm thinking about those issues that I want to bring up and how I would work with those ideas.
What kind of misconceptions do people have? Do they have misconceptions about such things as a bipartisan nature of the relationships? Do they have misconceptions about how the process works?
I think both. They have both misconceptions about the bipartisan nature. There is a great deal of bipartisanship, a great deal of work together. Again, you know, we really do think of ourselves as all Oregonians. We disagree on approaches, but you know that everybody I know is going to disagree with something that I do, because we aren't the same person. So that's not a surprise. But we have a lot of work together around the state that's bipartisan, that is also rural and urban and all of those other divides that people like to look at, because it's easier to deal with the divides rather than understand what we have in common. There's also a clear misconception about the kind of work that actually takes place here. We actually talk with one another. We with the committees and how you bring bills forward. It's not just I'm just a bill, although that's a pretty good little cartoon of how to deal with it. It really does involve how you set up relationships and in committees, and how you talk with the treasurer, and how you're able to talk with the legislative council and legislative fiscal office, and understand many of the things that are taking place and what's happened in the past. So it's partly just in understanding the context of what really takes place here.
What's the best part of the job? What's the worst part?
Best part of the job is meeting people and coming up with ideas and listening to the new ideas that people come up with on how they can make things better for people around the state of Oregon. Worst part of the job, well, there's something in terms of just energy. You're trying to stay focused and work with people, as many people as possible, and that can drain you. If you're not doing things that help you with that, that can be affected. I have gained way too much weight, and my hair is gray, but my hair was going to turn gray anyway. But I've certainly gained too much weight. I haven't done the exercises that I should be doing. I should not just be getting up in the morning looking at email. I should be out doing a jog or at least a walk in the morning. So I'm not getting that done, and that's probably the worst part, is that. And then the pressure in terms of the campaigning. There's a real difference between governing and campaigning, and that's a struggle that I think everyone who's an elected official has to deal with, because governing involves trying to get ideas and get things to work for the community and for the people that you're hired to work for. Campaigning is another thing altogether. That involves dealing with money and dealing with perceptions and promotion and all those things that really aren't directly related to being governing. And that's a real different. That's probably the most difficult part, is understanding that difference.
You were mentioning the bipartisan collegiality that exists, and that may be an Oregon thing more than in many other states. You were telling me earlier that your first encounters when you were physically in the state of Oregon were of a bipartisan nature. You are a Democrat, and yet you were welcomed here quite literally by a Republican.
You know, this is the kind of thing that's important. My background is such that I remember vividly Senator Mark Hatfield in Washington, D.C., letting me drop off my backpack and my sleeping bag in his office when I was in college in 1970 following Kent State. Now, I was not from Oregon. I was from Georgia at the time, and yet he was allowing a whole group of students to do that kind of thing. That's when I first met Senator Hatfield, and I just met him briefly. I didn't have a long conversation with him, but he allowed us to do that in his office. And I got a chance to meet Senator Bob Packwood and Governor Tom McCall during the time I was in college, as well as Wayne Morse. So I got a chance to see Republicans and Democrats from Oregon and understand and get a sense of what they were about. When I got to Oregon, I had the same kind of experience. Oregon has, I think, a different sense of hope than most states that I've lived in. And that shows. That's continued since 1974 when I arrived here. It still is present here. That's why I love the state. It's why I stayed. And it's one of those things that it's hard to explain to some folks in other states that that's the case. They have a belief that they can make things better for the people around them. But the sense of hope here is palpable. And that's why I really love the place.
State Representative Lew Frederick of Portland, thank you.
Thank you.